The first time my mother called me useless in public, I told myself she didn't mean it. The second time, I felt my body do that familiar, humiliating thing. My hands going numb, my pulse climbing like it was running away from me, my vision narrowing at the edges. The room tilted just slightly, like a ship changing course. And then she did it a third time. This time in a crowded corporate auditorium, under clean white stage lights, with my co-workers watching, some with pity, some with curiosity, and a few with the kind of enjoyment people pretend they don't have. She smiled as she said it, like she was proud of her cruelty. "Everyone, please excuse my daughter," she announced into the microphone. "She's sick again. Always sick. Always tired. And somehow always expecting the world to bend around her." A ripple of laughter, light and uncertain, moved through the room like wind through dry leaves. I stood frozen at the end of the aisle, clutching a folder so hard my fingers ached. The folder was plain. Cheap. The kind you buy in bulk. But inside were papers that could destroy her. And she didn't know yet. Not until the records were read aloud. Not until her face turned the color of paper. Not until the whole room understood what my mother had really done to me. Our kitchen always smelled like lemon polish and something burnt. My mother believed in appearances the way some people believe in God. Everything had to shine, the countertops, the silverware, the floors. If something didn't shine, she scrubbed it until it did. If she couldn't scrub it, she hid it. That's what she did with me. I remember sitting at the table with my homework spread out, my head throbbing softly behind my eyes. The morning sun fell through the window in a bright rectangle, making dust particles float like tiny planets. My mother stood at the sink, hands in soapy water, shoulders stiff. "You're pale," she said without turning around. "I feel weird," I admitted. I was 14. My voice still had that childish softness I hated. She finally looked at me. Her eyes did a fast scan, face, posture, hands, like she was inspecting merchandise. "We have guests tonight," she said. "Don't start." My throat tightened. "I'm not starting. My chest feels tight." She set a plate in the drying rack with a loud clink. "You always have something. Always. Do you know how embarrassing that is?" Embarrassing. Not worrying. Not scary. Not "are you okay?" Embarrassing. I pressed a hand to my ribs. The tightness came and went like a wave, unpredictable. "I can't breathe right," I whispered. My mother's mouth flattened. "You can breathe. You're talking." I stared at her like she'd slapped me. Then she walked over, leaned in, and lowered her voice into something sweet and dangerous. "Listen to me," she said. "You are not going to ruin tonight. You are not going to embarrass me. If you want attention, get it somewhere else." Something cold slipped into my stomach then, an understanding that wasn't fully formed yet, but heavy. In our house, pain was only real if it didn't inconvenience her. That was the first rule. The second rule was, if I cried, I was manipulating. So I swallowed it. I nodded. And I learned to breathe shallow. The first real diagnosis came later, after months of fatigue that sank into my bones like wet cement. After dizzy spells that made the hallway spin. After mornings where I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. A doctor finally said words out loud that sounded clinical and harmless until they landed on your life. Autoimmune. Chronic. Flare-ups. Management, not cure. I remember my mother's face in the exam room. She smiled politely, nodded like she understood, and then asked a question that made the doctor pause. "So, what can she do to stop it?" The doctor spoke slowly, like addressing someone who wanted to negotiate with gravity. "She didn't cause it." My mother's smile twitched at the corners. "But surely stress, diet, attention-seeking tendencies." The doctor cut her off with a kind of firmness I rarely saw adults use with my mother. "This is not psychological." My mother's cheeks flushed just slightly. "Of course. I didn't mean." But she did. She always did. Later that night, I sat on my bed with a little plastic pill organizer in my hands, 7 days, morning and night slots, translucent lids that snapped shut with a cheap click. It felt like holding a tiny coffin for the person I used to be. My mother stood in my doorway, arms crossed. "Don't make it your whole personality," she said. I looked up. "It's not a personality. It's my body." She exhaled sharply through her nose. "Everybody has something. You're not special." She left before I could answer. The pill organizer sat on my nightstand after that like a quiet witness. A recurring reminder. Monday a.m. Monday p.m. A life arranged into compartments. And every time I opened it, it made the same little click. Click. Like a lock. Or a countdown. I didn't go home. I went straight to the hospital. The billing department was in a beige office building with scuffed linoleum floors and posters about patient rights taped to the walls. I sat across from a billing manager named Rosa, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a voice that sounded like she'd spent her life explaining unfairness to people who didn't deserve it. She pulled up my account. "You paid," she confirmed immediately. 2 years ago. Paid in full. I swallowed. "Then why did I get a duplicate bill?" "It says it was requested by an authorized representative." Rosa's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Who is Evelyn Marsh to you?" she asked carefully. My stomach clenched. "My mother." Rosa's expression changed, subtle, but real. Like she'd seen this pattern before. "I'm not supposed to," she began, then sighed. "Listen. If someone requested records, there should be an authorization form on file." She clicked through screens. Then she turned the monitor slightly toward me. There it was. A scanned authorization form. My name printed. My address. My date of birth. And a signature. My signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was close, someone had practiced. But the loops were wrong. The pressure points didn't match. It looked like my name written by someone who had watched me sign checks for years. My vision swam. "That's forged," I whispered. Rosa's voice went soft. "I think you're right." I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Rosa leaned back, eyes steady. "Do you want me to print the request logs?" "Yes," I said instantly. "All of them." She nodded once, decisive. As the printer whirred, she looked at me over the top of her glasses. "Honey," she said quietly, "this is bigger than a bill." I pressed a hand to my mouth. Rosa slid the papers toward me. Timestamps, request IDs, the name of the requester. E. Marsh. Then Rosa added something I'll never forget. "There's also a note," she said. "Internal." "A note." Rosa hesitated, then read it aloud. "Caller insists patient is exaggerating illness. Caller requests detailed records to prove fraud to employer." My skin went cold. Fraud. My mother had used that word. The room felt suddenly too small. Rosa tapped the papers. "This is evidence. If you go legal or HR, this matters." I stared at the stack, my hands shaking as I gathered it. And that's when the pill organizer in my pocket clicked open slightly, like it knew. A small sound. A recurring motif. A reminder. I snapped it shut. And I thought, "You wanted proof, Mom? I'll give you proof." Rosa referred me to someone, her cousin, actually, an employment attorney named Daniel Cho. His office was modest. No marble, no fancy receptionist. Just bookshelves and a worn leather chair that creaked when I sat down. Daniel listened without interrupting, only occasionally making small notes. When I finished, my voice felt scraped raw. He leaned back. "Your mother inserted herself into your employment review," he said, "and may have committed identity fraud to obtain medical billing records. Plus interference with employment. Plus possible HIPAA issues on the hospital side, depending on what happened." I stared at him. "So I'm not crazy." Daniel's mouth softened slightly. "You're not crazy. You're being targeted." My chest tightened. "What do I do?" He steepled his fingers. "You document everything. You request your employer's full file. You ask HR to disclose the source of that statement. And," his eyes sharpened, "you do not confront your mother privately again." I swallowed. "Why not?" "Because she'll rewrite history," Daniel said. And because people like that escalate when cornered. You want the confrontation where it matters, on record. On record. The words hit like a bell. The motif shifted. The recurring object wasn't just the pill organizer anymore. It was paper. Records. Time-stamped truth. Daniel slid a card across his desk. If HR schedules a panel, you bring representation. If they refuse, you tell them you'll file a complaint. And you do it calmly. Controlled. Controlled. That was the opposite of how my mother wanted me. She wanted me emotional. Hysterical. Unstable. Because then she could dismiss me. Daniel's voice softened. "I'm sorry," he said, and I believed him. "But if you want justice, you have to be strategic." I nodded slowly. Strategic. I could do that. I had survived years of pain by being strategic. Now I would survive her. Open forum. I read it twice, my stomach twisting. Open forum meant public. It meant leadership. It meant example. My mother wanted a stage. She had always wanted a stage. I stared at the email until my eyes burned. Then I opened my drawer and pulled out the folder I'd started building. Inside. Hospital billing request logs. Forged authorization scan. Internal hospital note quoting my mother. My paid-in-full receipts. Doctor letters. Accommodation approvals. A timeline Daniel helped me create. I slipped the folder into my bag. Then I placed the pill organizer on top of it, like a seal. Click. And I whispered to the empty room. "Okay." Pain always gets worse when stress is high. My joints ached like they were full of crushed glass. My skin felt too sensitive, like even air was abrasive. My stomach rolled, unsettled. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the refrigerator hum, the far-off sound of traffic, a neighbor's muffled TV. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Tomorrow, please don't embarrass yourself. If you behave, we can handle this quietly." Quietly. The word made my teeth clench. Quietly meant, she controls the narrative. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached my nightstand, opened the pill organizer, and took my night dose. Click. The sound was tiny, but in the silence it felt loud. A little ritual. A little promise. The auditorium was brighter than I expected. Tiered seating. A stage with a podium. A large screen behind it with the company logo, Hawthorne and Pierce in sleek lettering, the kind meant to inspire trust. People filed in, murmuring. I saw my co-workers scattered through the rows. Some avoided my eyes. Some gave me looks that were almost kind. A few looked eager. I stood near the back, folder in hand, Daniel beside me. Daniel wore a plain suit, calm and unremarkable in the way good lawyers often are, like he could disappear until it was time to strike. Then my mother entered. She walked down the aisle like she belonged there. Like she owned the air. She wore a cream blazer, pearl earrings, hair smooth. She smiled at people. Confident. Practiced. She didn't look at me at first. Then she did. Her smile widened slightly, like a warning. I'm in control. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. Slow. Shallow. No, deeper. Because I was done shrinking. Mara from HR stepped onto the stage. "Thank you for attending," she began. "Today we're reviewing a compliance case regarding attendance and medical leave verification." I heard my name spoken into a microphone and felt my heart stumble. A few heads turned toward me. Mara continued, "We are committed to fairness, accountability, and workplace integrity." Integrity. The word tasted bitter. Then Gordon from legal joined her. "We have received concerns regarding potential misuse of medical accommodations," he said. And then, like she'd been invited to deliver a keynote, my mother stepped up as an external compliance consultant. She took the microphone from Gordon with ease. "My name is Evelyn Marsh," she said warmly. "I've been asked to assist due to my experience in compliance and, unfortunately, due to my personal proximity to the matter." Her eyes swept the room, pausing on me for a beat. "My daughter," she said, voice sweet, "has been unwell for years." A few people shifted uncomfortably. My mother sighed theatrically. And while I sympathize with anyone dealing with illness, we must also acknowledge how easily such claims can be exaggerated. My hands tightened around my folder. She continued, I've watched her fall into patterns, avoidance, dependency. She's always been delicate. Delicate. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Then she delivered the line that snapped something inside me. Everyone, please excuse my daughter, she said, gesturing vaguely. She's sick again. Always sick. Always tired. And somehow always expecting the world to bend around her. Some people laughed, nervous, uncertain. My mother smiled as if she'd landed a joke. And then she added, almost casually, it's hard to say this, but as her mother, I worry she's learned that weakness gets attention. I heard a quiet gasp from somewhere in the seats. My lungs felt tight. Daniel leaned slightly toward me. Now, he murmured. I stepped forward. My shoes clicked against the aisle floor, each step sounding too loud. I felt hundreds of eyes on me. My mother's smile faltered just slightly, like she hadn't expected me to move. Mara looked startled. This isn't. Daniel's voice cut in, calm but firm. My client has the right to respond. If you deny her, we'll proceed with a formal complaint regarding ADA retaliation and hostile process. The room stilled. Gordon's jaw tightened. Mara swallowed. Fine. Briefly. I reached the front row, then turned to face the stage, my voice shaking at first. My name is, I said it. My name sounded small in the auditorium. I took a breath. I want to address what's being said about me, I continued. And I want it on record. On record. My mother's posture stiffened. I looked directly at her. You called me sick and useless, I said quietly. You implied I'm exaggerating. You implied I'm committing fraud. My mother lifted her chin. I implied nothing. I stated my concern. I nodded once. Then we'll talk about records, I said. The word records did something to her face. It was subtle. A flicker. But it was there. I reached into my folder and pulled out the first page. 2 years ago, I went to the ER during a flare, I said. The bill was paid. In full. I held up the receipt. Mara leaned forward slightly. Gordon's eyes narrowed. My mother's lips parted just a little. Then I lifted the next set of papers. Last week, a duplicate hospital bill was delivered to my home, I continued. It was requested by an authorized representative, E. Marsh. A murmur rippled through the auditorium. My mother laughed lightly. That means nothing. I was trying to help her keep track. I didn't stop. The hospital produced the authorization form used to request those records, I said, voice steadier now. It contains a forged signature. The word forged landed like a dropped glass. My mother's face changed. Not fully yet. But color drained from her cheeks in a slow wave. Gordon held out his hand. Let me see that. I walked up to the stage steps and handed him the copy. He studied it, then looked at Mara. Mara's expression tightened into something cautious. My mother leaned forward. This is ridiculous. She's confused. I pulled out the next page. The hospital also has an internal note, I said. My throat tightened, but I pushed through. It states, caller insists patient is exaggerating illness. Caller requests detailed records to prove fraud to employer. I looked at my mother. Do you want me to read the whole note aloud? I asked softly. The auditorium went silent. My mother's mouth opened. Closed. Her eyes darted. Calculating. She looked, just for a second, like someone watching the floor give way under her feet. Mara's voice was careful. Ms. Marsh, did you request these records? My mother's laugh came out too sharp. As her mother. Gordon cut in. Did you request them, yes or no? My mother's eyes flashed. You don't understand, she said, voice rising. She's unstable. She misremembers. She's always sick. Answer, Gordon said. My mother's cheeks were pale now. She swallowed. I requested billing clarification. That's not illegal. Daniel stepped forward. Obtaining protected health information under false authorization can be illegal, he said calmly. And interfering with an employee's protected medical leave process can expose both the individual and the employer to liability. The word liability snapped through the room like electricity. Mara's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the microphone. We're going to pause this session, she said. Immediately. My mother snapped, You can't, this is my daughter. But Mara's voice hardened. Security will escort non-essential personnel out. Non-essential. I saw my mother's eyes widen. That word hit her like a slap. She turned to me then, fully, rage burning through her composure. You ungrateful, she hissed, microphone still live. After everything I've done. And I leaned in, my voice low but clear enough to carry. You didn't do everything, I said. You did this. My mother's breath caught. For the first time in my life, she looked afraid. Not of me. Of the truth. They moved us into a smaller room, HR, legal, Daniel, me. No audience now. But the damage was already done. People had heard. The narrative had shifted. Mara looked like she'd aged 10 years in an hour. Gordon spoke bluntly. We were not aware an external consultant had personal involvement. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. Yet she was allowed to present allegations publicly. Mara's voice shook. We thought it would add credibility. Credibility. I almost laughed. Instead, I said quietly, You let her shame me. Mara's eyes flicked up, guilt crossing her face. Gordon exhaled. We will be launching an internal investigation. Your employment status is not under disciplinary review at this time. We will also, his jaw tightened, review how medical information was handled. Daniel nodded. We'll want that in writing. Mara swallowed. You'll have it. And then came the twist I didn't expect. Gordon turned to me, voice lower. Do you believe your mother accessed any of your HR medical files? My stomach dropped. I don't know. Gordon's expression was grim. Because if she did, we have a breach. And if we have a breach, we have reporting obligations. I stared at him. A breach. Not just my humiliation. Not just my job. But the company's legal exposure. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes too, not compassion, but self-preservation. And I realized, the system didn't care about my suffering. It cared about risk. But sometimes, risk could be leverage. Daniel's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. We will be requesting an audit trail of access logs, he said. Mara nodded quickly. Yes. Yes, of course. My pulse hammered. Because if those access logs showed my mother's name, if they showed her reaching into my files, then this wasn't just family cruelty. It was criminal. And my mother would not survive public accountability. Not with her precious reputation. I sat in my car afterward, hands on the steering wheel, body trembling with delayed shock. Outside, the sky was washed grey-blue, the color of exhausted daylight. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. From my mother. I didn't want to listen. But I did. Her voice came through, tight and furious. You think you won, she snapped. You think you embarrassed me and that's the end. You don't understand what you've done. You don't understand what people will say. You've ruined everything. Then her tone shifted, sharp sweetness, that familiar manipulation. I was trying to protect you. You're too weak to protect yourself. You always have been. I closed my eyes. My hands shook. Then she hissed, If you tell anyone else, I swear. The message cut off. I stared at my phone. She'd threatened me. On record. I exhaled slowly. My chest hurt, but not like illness. Like grief. Because no matter how many times I'd told myself she loved me in her own way. Love doesn't forge your signature to prove you're a fraud. Love doesn't put you on a stage and call you useless. Love doesn't need you small. I reached into my bag and pulled out the pill organizer. I turned it over in my hands. Plastic. Cheap. Ordinary. Yet it had been with me through every flare. Every night I cried quietly so no one would accuse me of seeking attention. I opened it. Click. I stared at the compartments, each one holding a tiny piece of survival. And I realized something I'd never said out loud before. I'm not ashamed, I whispered. The words felt unfamiliar. But true. That week, Daniel sent the formal requests, access logs, investigation records, written confirmation of my standing. And the hospital, quietly, opened their own inquiry into how my mother's forged authorization had been accepted. 2 investigations. 2 paper trails. 2 sets of records moving toward the same name. Evelyn Marsh. My mother kept texting, apologies that sounded like threats, threats that sounded like apologies. And then, on Friday night, an unfamiliar number called me. I let it go to voicemail. A woman's voice, calm and professional, spoke into the silence. Hello. This is internal compliance. We need to ask you about an additional set of requests made under your name. Requests you may not be aware of. I felt my stomach drop. Additional requests. My hand tightened around the phone. Because if my mother had been pulling my records, how long had she been doing it? And what else had she taken? The voicemail replayed in my head like a looping siren. Additional requests made under your name. I sat on the edge of my couch, my work bag still on the floor, the folder half open like it was breathing. Outside the window, the city moved on. Headlights sliding across the walls, distant sirens, somebody laughing too loud down the street. My body felt like it was waiting for impact. I called the number back before I could talk myself out of it. It rang twice. A woman answered. Compliance. This is Andrea. Hi, I said. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. You left me a voicemail. A pause. Keys clicking. Yes, she said. Thank you for calling back. We have an open inquiry regarding multiple records requests, medical billing documentation, itemized statements, and something else. What else? My throat tightened. There was a soft inhale on the line, like she didn't want to say it. Employment-related verification forms, she said. I blinked. From the hospital? Yes. Forms typically requested by employers or third-party administrators. The requests were made in your name, but, she stopped, and the pause was heavy. The contact details used for the requests do not match the contact information you provided on file. My skin went cold. What contact details? I asked. A different email address, she said. And a phone number we do not have recorded for you. I gripped the edge of the couch. Can you tell me the email? I can provide it as part of your records packet, Andrea said carefully. But I need to verify your identity first, and then we'll document that you're disputing the requests. Disputing. As if my life was a charge on a credit card. I gave her the information. Name. Date of birth. Address. The answers to questions that felt like a stranger quizzing me about my own existence. Andrea typed. Okay, she said. I'll send you a secure link to download the full request log. It will include timestamps, the requesting party's metadata, and internal notes. My chest tightened. Internal notes like the one that said my mother was trying to prove fraud. Andrea paused. Yes, she admitted. Similar. I swallowed. Why are you calling me now? Because, she said, voice flattening into professional truth, the volume and frequency of requests suggests this wasn't a one-time incident. It suggests a pattern. A pattern. I stared at the folder on my floor, at the stack of paper that already felt like too much. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. I hope you're proud of yourself. They're calling me. I told them you're confused. Stop this. My breath hitched. Andrea was still on the line. Are you there? Yes, I said, and my voice had changed, less frightened, more sharp. I'm here. Do you have legal counsel? She asked. Yes, I said. I do now. Good, Andrea replied. Because this is moving beyond HR. I hung up and sat very still. My body was vibrating, not from sickness this time, not from a flare. From adrenaline. I looked down at my hands. They weren't numb. They were steady. And that scared me, too, because steady meant I was about to do something I couldn't undo. I reached into my bag and pulled out the pill organizer. Held it. Turned it over. Plastic. Cheap. Familiar. Click. I shut it firmly and whispered into the quiet apartment. You made it official, Mom. Scene 16. The email address that wasn't mine. Int. Law office. Next morning. Daniel's office smelled like coffee that had been reheated too many times and paper that had lived too long in boxes. He had the secure packet open on his laptop when I arrived. Sit, he said gently, but his eyes were hard. I sat, my joints aching with the kind of ache that came after emotional whiplash. Daniel rotated the screen toward me. There was the request log. Rows and rows, timestamps, request types, departments contacted. And then the metadata. A Gmail address I'd never seen before. It was a variation of my name, but not quite. Close enough to fool someone moving fast. And the phone number on file for the requests. A number that made Daniel's jaw tighten. Where did she get that? I whispered. She either set it up, Daniel said, or she rerouted your information somewhere. The room felt suddenly smaller. The air heavier. I scrolled. And then I saw something that punched a hole straight through my stomach. Request type, complete medical record release, longitudinal summary. Complete. Not just billing. Not just items. Everything. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew. Daniel's voice was careful. It means she was trying to obtain your complete medical history. Diagnoses, physician notes, medications, visit summaries. All of it. I felt my face heat, then drain. My privacy. My body. My entire life reduced to files someone could print and wave around like proof of weakness. Daniel pointed to an internal note in the log. Read that, he said. I read aloud, my voice catching. Caller states patient is unreliable employee. Caller requests detailed records to support termination and avoid public embarrassment to family name. Avoid public embarrassment. I stared at the words until they blurred. This wasn't just cruelty. This was strategy. My mother was trying to build a case against me. Not to protect me. To control my future. To make sure I never stood tall enough to cast a shadow she couldn't manage. Daniel closed the laptop softly. I want you to understand something, he said. This is not normal parental involvement. This is interference. It's identity misuse. Possibly criminal. Definitely civil. My throat tightened. She'll deny it. She already did, Daniel said. But denial doesn't erase logs. He slid a legal pad toward me. Today, he continued, we draft 2 letters. 2? I asked. One to your employer, he said. Demanding the access logs and the identity of the concerned party. And the second? He held my gaze. To your mother. I flinched. You said don't confront her privately. This isn't private, Daniel said. This is written. Documented. Delivered. It gives her notice. It sets boundaries. It creates a record of your objection. A record. That word again. Paper as shield. Paper as weapon. I nodded slowly. Daniel's voice softened slightly. Also, there's something else. My stomach sank. What? He opened another tab and turned the screen again. A photo attachment in the compliance packet. A scanned document. My name at the top. A letter drafted to Hawthorne and Pierce. From a family representative. It claimed I had a long history of psychosomatic episodes and attention-seeking behavior. It recommended my employer consider termination to reduce liability. At the bottom was a signature. Not mine. Hers. My mother's full name. Evelyn Marsh. Bold as if she believed the world was hers to sign. I felt something inside me go very still. Not shock. Not sadness. A quiet, cold clarity. You see, Daniel murmured. She put it in writing. I stared at the signature. I remembered her telling me not to make it my personality. I remembered her laughing at Thanksgiving. I remembered the auditorium, her voice in the mic, the way she looked like she enjoyed the humiliation. And for the first time, the question formed clearly in my mind, sharp enough to hurt. How long has she been trying to erase me? The office break room smelled like burnt coffee and microwaved leftovers. I walked in and saw two co-workers go silent mid-sentence. Their eyes flicked to me, then away. I felt that familiar heat of shame crawl up my neck, old instinct, trained by years of my mother's voice. But I forced myself not to retreat. I poured water into a paper cup. My hands were steady. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. Hey, a voice said. I turned. It was Tessa from my team, friendly, bright, always the one who organized birthday cards and group lunches. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You okay? She asked. I'm fine, I said. Her gaze darted to the folder in my arms. That was intense yesterday. I didn't answer. Tessa lowered her voice. People are talking. Let them, I said. She hesitated, then leaned in like she was sharing something confidential. I just didn't know it was that serious, she said. Your mom seemed so. So what? I asked. Tessa's lips parted, then closed. So polished. So reasonable. So convincing. I waited. Tessa swallowed. So sure. I nodded once. A pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. I got an email, she said quietly. A few weeks ago. From someone claiming to be helping you. My mouth went dry. Helping me how? Tessa looked uncomfortable. It said you were struggling. That you might not be able to handle your workload. That I should keep an eye out. I stared at her. Who sent it? I asked. Tessa's eyes flicked away. It didn't say. It was from a Gmail address. Daniel's packet flashed in my mind. The fake email. The pattern. My pulse hammered. What did you do with it? I asked. Tessa's cheeks flushed. I forwarded it to HR. I thought, if you needed help. The words blurred. Help. That's what my mother always called control. I forced my voice steady. Did you tell anyone else? Tessa's silence was answer enough. I felt the break room tilt. A chair scraped somewhere behind me. The hum of the fridge felt suddenly loud. I looked at Tessa and realized, betrayal didn't always look like malice. Sometimes it looked like someone wanting to feel useful. Sometimes it looked like someone believing the wrong story because the right story was inconvenient. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Tessa blinked. Okay. Yes, I said, my voice quiet. Thank you for telling me. I turned and left before she could see my hands shaking. In the hallway, I pressed my palm to the cool wall and breathed. Slow. Deep. My illness made me vulnerable. But my mother had made me isolated. And isolation, quietly, was what killed people like me. Not the disease. The shame. I pulled the pill organizer from my pocket and felt its edges. Click. A reminder. You are real. This is real. You are not crazy. Mara met me with a look that tried to be kind and failed. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a chair. Gordon was there too, jaw clenched, eyes tired. A new person sat beside them, Elaine, outside counsel, crisp and calm. Elaine slid a document across the table. We'd like to resolve this quickly, she said. Resolve. Such a clean word. I looked down. It was a severance agreement. My stomach dropped. Mara spoke quickly. It's not punitive. It's just, given the environment. The environment you created. Daniel cut in. He sat beside me now, calm as a blade. Elaine's smile didn't move. We're offering 3 months' pay, continuation of benefits for a limited period, and a neutral reference. In exchange, of course, was the line that always mattered. Non-disclosure. Non-disparagement. Release of claims. A muzzle. Silence bought with money. My hands trembled slightly as I held the paper. Daniel's voice was steady. My client is not resigning under duress. She is requesting an audit trail, a formal retraction of defamatory statements made in an open forum, and assurance that medical accommodation processes will remain intact. Elaine's smile tightened. That's complicated. Daniel leaned in slightly. Then so is litigation. Mara looked like she might cry. Gordon rubbed his forehead. I sat very still. A part of me, the old part, wanted to take the money. Disappear. Start over somewhere else. Be the sick girl who quietly leaves so no one has to deal with her. But another part of me, the part that had walked down that auditorium aisle, was done running. My mother would follow me anywhere if she believed she could still control my story. And if I left now, she'd learn the lesson she always believed. Shame works. I looked up at Mara. You let my mother call me useless, I said quietly. You let her accuse me of fraud. And now you want to pay me to go away. Mara's face flushed. We didn't. Yes, I said. You did. Elaine interjected smoothly. We're trying to protect all parties. I laughed. One short sound that surprised even me. No, I said. You're trying to protect the company. Gordon's jaw flexed. Daniel's hand nudged my folder gently, a silent question. Are you ready? I opened it. I pulled out the compliance packet, fake email metadata, forged authorization, internal hospital notes, request logs, the letter signed by my mother. I slid it across the table. Elaine's eyes flicked down. And for the first time, her expression changed. Not sympathy. Calculation. Risk assessment. Gordon leaned forward and scanned the documents. Mara's mouth opened. Elaine's voice lowered. Where did you get these? From the hospital compliance inquiry, Daniel said. And from the hospital billing manager who provided request logs after we identified forgery. Elaine's smile was gone now. Gordon's face had gone tight, pale around the mouth. Mara whispered, Oh my God. I watched them read. Watched them realize. This wasn't a messy employee complaint. This was a data breach and third-party interference with an employee's protected medical information. It wasn't just my mother's reputation on the line anymore. It was theirs. Elaine set the papers down carefully, like they were sharp. We'll need to adjourn, she said. Daniel nodded. You'll provide the access logs by end of week, he said. And a written statement regarding my client's standing, reinstatement of any compromised accommodations, and a commitment to non-retaliation. Elaine's eyes met mine. And I saw it then, something dark and small behind her professionalism. Fear. Because fear is what corporations understand best. And for once, my pain had translated into a language they couldn't ignore. I didn't go to my mother. I went to the only person in my family who had ever looked at me like I was a person and not a problem. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, lived in a small house that smelled like lavender and old books. Wind chimes hung on the porch and tapped softly in the breeze. She opened the door before I even knocked, as if she'd been waiting. Her eyes took one look at me and softened. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. I didn't cry. Not yet. But my throat burned. Inside, she poured tea. Chamomile. Honey. The smell filled the kitchen like a blanket. We sat at her table, the wood scratched and familiar. She reached across and held my hand. You're shaking, she said. I'm fine. I lied automatically. Her grip tightened gently. No, she said. Tell me. So I did. I told her about the auditorium. The forged signature. The fake email address. The letter my mother wrote to my employer. Nana Ruth's face changed as I spoke. Shock, then anger, then something like sorrow. When I finished, she sat very still. Then she stood up without a word and walked to a cabinet. She opened it and pulled out a small metal box. My stomach tightened. She brought it to the table and set it down with a soft clunk. What's that? I asked. Nana Ruth hesitated, then looked me in the eye. It's something I kept, she said quietly. Because I knew one day, you might need it. My pulse thudded. She opened the box. Inside were envelopes, documents, and one object that made my breath catch. A second pill organizer. Older. Scratched. Yellowed plastic. I stared. Why do you have that? Nana Ruth's lips trembled slightly. Because, she whispered, your mother wasn't always the healthy golden girl she pretends to be. My skin went cold. Nana Ruth pulled out a document, an old medical record summary, folded and refolded. She smoothed it carefully. This is from when Evelyn was in her 20s, she said. Before she married your father. Before she decided she could outrun the truth by polishing it. I swallowed hard. What truth? Nana Ruth's eyes were wet. She had symptoms, Nana said. Fatigue. Pain. Episodes where she couldn't get out of bed. The doctors suspected autoimmune issues. She hated it. My heart hammered. She told everyone I was exaggerating, I whispered, the words tasting bitter. She said illness was weakness. Nana Ruth nodded slowly. Because she was terrified, she said. And because she learned something early. What? I asked. Nana Ruth's voice dropped. Her father, your grandfather, was cruel, she said. He told her sick people were burdens. That weakness was shame. She survived by becoming hard. Hard. I thought of my mother's smile in the auditorium. The laughter. The ease with which she made me smaller. Nana Ruth reached for my hand again. I'm not excusing her, she said firmly. But I'm telling you something important. What? I whispered. Nana Ruth held my gaze. She knows what this feels like, she said. That's why she's so vicious. Because when she looks at you, she sees the part of herself she despises. My breath caught. I stared at the older pill organizer in the box. 2 organizers. 2 bodies betrayed by biology. One person chose shame as armor. The other. I didn't know yet what I was choosing. Nana Ruth slid another envelope toward me. And this, she said, is a letter your mother wrote me last month. I blinked. She wrote you. Nana Ruth nodded, jaw tight. She wanted me to side with her, she said. She said you were ruining the family name. She asked me to talk sense into you. My hands trembled as I opened it. My mother's handwriting was familiar, precise, controlled, slanted like it was always hurrying to get to the point. The letter said, if she keeps this up, she'll destroy everything. I need you to remind her where she belongs. She's sick. She's unstable. She doesn't understand consequences. Where she belongs. The words made my stomach twist. Nana Ruth leaned closer, voice like a whisper and a blade. You belong with the truth, she said. Not with her story. I felt tears sting my eyes finally, hot and humiliating. But Nana Ruth didn't look away. She just held my hand while I cried, quietly, like I had learned to do. And for the first time, crying didn't feel like manipulation. It felt like release. Friday. Daniel called me in the moment the email came. They sent them, he said. My heart slammed against my ribs. They sent the access logs. The corporate access logs were clean and brutal. Timestamps, usernames, IP addresses. Daniel printed them and placed them on the desk. I stared. Rows of data. Then my eyes caught on the name. Not Evelyn Marsh. Not directly. Something worse. A corporate consultant account. An account assigned to external compliance, E. Marsh Consulting. And next to it, access to my file. Multiple times. Downloaded attachments. Opened physician notes. Viewed accommodation forms. My mouth went dry. Daniel's voice was quiet. She accessed it. I sank into the chair, feeling my body go heavy. She accessed my HR medical file, I whispered. Daniel nodded once. Yes. My chest tightened. Not from illness, something sharper. Violation. That's what it was. Not just humiliation. Not just cruelty. A violation with timestamps. My phone buzzed. A call from my mother. I stared at it, my hands shaking. Daniel watched me. Don't answer, he said. I let it ring out. Then another call. Then another. Then a text. They told me you're accusing me of a breach. You have no idea what you're doing. Call me now. Daniel's eyes narrowed. She's panicking, he murmured. Good. Good. The word tasted strange, but it was true. Because my mother only panicked when she couldn't control the story. Daniel leaned forward. Next step, he said. We request a formal meeting with HR, legal, and, if needed, outside counsel. We present the logs. We demand corrective action. And we put your mother's interference on the record. On the record. I stared at the papers. A part of me wanted to crawl into bed and disappear. But Nana Ruth's voice echoed. You belong with the truth. I nodded slowly. Okay, I whispered. Daniel's gaze held mine. This will get ugly, he warned. I swallowed. It already is. Daniel nodded. Then we do it clean. Clean. My mother's favorite word. She liked things clean the way she liked them shiny. But this wasn't polish. This was bleach. This was disinfectant. This was burning the infection out. This time, there was no auditorium. No audience. Just a long table and the hum of air conditioning. Mara sat with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. Gordon sat beside her, looking like he hadn't slept. Elaine was back, eyes sharp. And then, the door opened. My mother walked in. Still polished. Still composed. But her eyes had a wild brightness, like a person holding a cracked glass and trying not to spill. She looked at me and smiled thinly. Hello, she said as if we were at brunch. I didn't smile back. Daniel placed a folder on the table and slid it forward. We have the access logs, he said calmly. Elaine's gaze flicked to my mother. My mother's smile didn't move. Access logs, she repeated lightly. This is all so dramatic. Daniel opened the folder and turned a page. External compliance account assigned to E. Marsh Consulting, he said. Accessed employee medical accommodation file on the following dates. He read them. Slowly. Precisely. Each date landed like a hammer. My mother's face didn't change at first. But I watched her fingers. They twitched slightly, tapping once against her purse. Tap. Tap. Like my pill organizer, but wrong. A nervous rhythm. Daniel continued. Downloaded physician documentation. He looked up. Viewed diagnostic summaries. He paused. Accessed private medical notes. My mother's cheeks had gone pale now, the way they had in the auditorium, but this time there was no microphone to hide behind. No laughter to mask the silence. Just truth. Elaine spoke, voice cold. Ms. Marsh, she said, did you access this employee's medical file? My mother's laugh was a brittle sound. I don't recall. I reviewed compliance materials. Gordon cut in. You accessed a specific file. Mara's voice shook. My God, Evelyn. My mother turned sharply to Mara, eyes flashing. Don't you dare speak to me like that. Then she looked at me, and her composure cracked. You did this, she hissed. You're punishing me because you're weak. Weak. The word hit, but it didn't stick anymore. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet. No, I said. You punished me because you were ashamed. My mother's mouth opened. Closed. Daniel slid another document forward, the hospital's internal note. He read it aloud, voice even. Caller insists patient is exaggerating illness. Caller requests detailed records to prove fraud to employer. The room went still. Elaine's face hardened. Gordon exhaled slowly like he was trying not to explode. My mother whispered, I was trying to protect the family. I stared at her. And I realized the truth was simpler than I'd ever allowed myself to see. She wasn't protecting the family. She was protecting herself from the idea that weakness could live in her bloodline. That sickness could touch her and make her ordinary. That life could be uncontrollable. Daniel spoke again. We are requesting, he said, a formal written acknowledgement of the breach, a complete retraction of the public accusations, and confirmation of my client's continued employment with protections against retaliation. We also request that Ms. Marsh be barred from any further involvement in this employee's case." Elaine nodded slowly, already calculating. Mara looked like she might faint. Gordon's voice was clipped. "Agreed," he said. "We will comply." My mother's eyes widened. "You can't bar me," she snapped. "I'm an external consultant," Gordon said coldly. "Not family. Not internal. And not protected." Not protected. My mother swallowed. I saw it then, the moment she understood she wasn't untouchable in this room. She turned to me, voice dropping into something intimate and venomous. "You think they'll care about you," she whispered. "They'll use you, then discard you. You'll always be the sick girl. Always." For a second, my chest tightened, not because she was right, but because she had been the voice in my head for so long. Then Nana Ruth's hand on mine came back to me. "You belong with the truth." I looked at my mother, and my voice didn't shake. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but I won't be your secret anymore." Her face went blank. And in that blankness, I saw it, the true fear. Not the fear of losing me. The fear of losing the narrative. An email went out to leadership and involved staff. A formal apology, phrased in corporate language, acknowledging an inappropriate external contribution and reaffirming the company's commitment to medical privacy and accommodations. No one said my mother's name. But everyone knew. My accommodations were reinstated, confirmed in writing. HR assigned a new case manager. Daniel negotiated a settlement clause that required the company to cover my legal fees and provide additional protections. And my job, my actual work, began to feel like work again, not warfare. But there was cost. People still looked at me differently. Not with laughter. With caution. With the awareness that I was no longer safe to bully. And that's a strange kind of loneliness, when people respect you out of fear instead of understanding. One afternoon, Tessa approached my desk. She looked smaller than usual, hands clasped. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." I studied her face. "I believe you," I said. And I did. Then I added, "But you still forwarded it." Tessa flinched. "I was trying to help," she whispered. I nodded. "I know. A beat. Next time," I said softly, "help by asking me first." She swallowed and nodded. Small justice. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. But real. A month later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. I recognized my mother's handwriting instantly. My stomach clenched as I opened it. Inside was a single page. "You've made me look like a monster. I hope you're happy. I did what I had to do. You'll understand one day." No apology. No accountability. Just the same old story. She was forced, she was the victim, she was righteous. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I walked to my kitchen trash can. I held it over the opening. My hand trembled. Not because I wanted to keep it. Because a part of me, the child part, still wanted her to love me in a way that didn't hurt. I thought of the auditorium. Of the HR room. Of the access logs. Of her voice calling me weak. Then I thought of my own body, how hard it fought just to carry me through ordinary days. How many times I'd apologized for existing. I dropped the letter into the trash. It landed silently. No dramatic tear. No burning. Just letting go. I went to my nightstand. Opened my pill organizer. Click. I took my medication. And for the first time in my life, the click didn't feel like a lock. It felt like a door. That same night, my phone buzzed. A message from Nana Ruth. "Sweetheart. Call me when you can. Your mother came by. She was looking for something." My pulse spiked. Looking for what? I called immediately, but Nana didn't pick up. Instead, another message appeared, this time from an unknown number. A photo attachment. I opened it. It was a picture of my compliance packet. My documents. My logs. Taken from someone's hands. And beneath it, one line of text. "You think you have all the records. You don't." I stared at the screen as the room seemed to shrink around me. My hands went numb again, That old familiar numbness. Not from illness. From dread. Because if my mother had been digging, if she'd been looking for something, then maybe this wasn't just about proving I was sick. Maybe it was about hiding what she'd done for years. And the worst part, I suddenly realized there was one set of records I hadn't requested yet. The oldest ones. The ones from when I was 14. The first time I said I couldn't breathe. The first time she told me I was embarrassing. The first time I learned pain was something to hide. I swallowed hard. Because what if the truth didn't start with me? What if it started with her? And what if I was only just now stepping into the part of the story she'd been trying to bury all along? The photo sat on my screen like a threat with teeth. My compliance packet, my papers, captured at an angle as if someone had lifted them, snapped the picture, and sent it just to let me know they could. You think you have all the records? You don't. My thumb hovered over the unknown number. My heart was racing in that careful way it does when my body can't decide if the danger is physical or emotional. This wasn't a flare. Not yet. This was something else. My nervous system trying to protect me from a predator it recognized. I forced myself to breathe through my nose. Slow. In. Out. I looked around my apartment, at the ordinary things. A dish towel hanging crookedly, a half-full water glass, my coat on the chair. Normal. My life had fought for normal. And someone, my mother, was still trying to poison it. My phone buzzed again. Nana Ruth. I answered on the first ring. Nana. Her voice came tight, like she'd been holding her breath. She came by, sweetheart. My stomach dropped. Tonight? Yes, Nana whispered. She was different. Not her usual polished self. She kept asking about old papers. About your childhood. She opened drawers I told her not to. My mouth went dry. Did she take anything? A pause that lasted too long. I don't know, Nana admitted. I tried to watch her, but she moved fast. She looked in the metal box. My pulse thudded hard. The one with her old medical record. Yes, Nana said, voice trembling. And she kept saying, where is it? Like she was looking for something specific. I sat down slowly, as if standing might make me fall. Nana, I said carefully, what is she looking for? Nana's voice cracked. I think it's a letter. An old letter. One I hid because, she swallowed. Because I was afraid one day she'd hurt you to keep it buried. My throat tightened. A letter about what? Nana's breath came shallow. About the first time you got sick, she whispered. The room seemed to dim. My skin prickled. The first time I got sick was 14, I said, barely hearing my own voice. No, Nana said softly. The first time you got sick was younger. I stared at the wall, my mind searching through fog. I remembered fragments. Being small in a waiting room. The smell of antiseptic. My mother's hand gripping my arm too tightly. The way she'd said, stop fussing, in a hissed whisper that felt like a command. Nana, I whispered. What happened? Nana's voice fell into a hush so deep it felt like confession. Your mother, she said, has been managing your records for a long time. Managing. That word again. Her favorite. Control dressed as care. I need to see the letter, I said, voice firm despite the tremble in my hands. Where is it? Nana hesitated. Then she said, come tomorrow morning. Early. Before she returns. Returns. My stomach twisted. You think she'll come back? Nana's voice turned sharp. Yes, she said. And sweetheart, lock your doors tonight. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. After we hung up, I sat in silence. Then, without thinking, I reached for my pill organizer on the nightstand. Plastic. Light. Unassuming. I opened it. Click. The sound was small, but it anchored me to reality. Monday AM. Monday PM. Survival in compartments. I shut it. Click. And I whispered, okay. Then I pulled my folder closer and added a new page at the front. Childhood records, missing? I wrote the word that had haunted me for years but now felt like a promise. Enough. Nana's house was quiet when I arrived, the air cold and still. The wind chimes on her porch made a soft metallic tapping, like someone counting time. Inside, her kitchen smelled like toast and lavender tea. Comfort. Familiarity. Nana Ruth stood by the table with a folder already laid out. Her hands looked older today, more veined, more fragile, but her eyes were sharp. "I didn't sleep," she said simply. "Me neither," I admitted. She gestured to the chair. "I Saturday." Nana slid a worn envelope across the table. It was thick, the paper soft at the edges from age. My heart stuttered. "This is what she was looking for," Nana said. I stared at the envelope as if it might bite. The handwriting on the front wasn't my mother's. It was a doctor's office stamp, faded. Pediatric immunology. Records request. My stomach tightened. Nana's voice shook. "Evelyn requested this years ago. She insisted she needed to organize your medical history. She said you were too young to understand, and Nana swallowed hard, shame flickering. I let her." I opened the envelope with careful hands. Inside was a copy of a letter, typed, formal, and devastating in its calmness. It was from a pediatric specialist. It explained early symptoms. It mentioned recurrent episodes, unexplained fatigue, inflammatory markers. It suggested an autoimmune process that might develop over time. Then, halfway down, a line that made my vision blur. Parent requests to minimize documentation due to concerns about future insurability and family reputation. I read it again. Parent requests to minimize documentation. My throat closed. Nana's voice was a whisper. "She didn't want your record to follow you." My hands trembled. "That sounds like protection." Nana shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "It was control. She wanted to decide what was real and what wasn't. She didn't want anyone to have proof that you were sick before you could defend yourself." I stared at the sentence, my chest aching. All those years my mother called me dramatic. All those years she implied it was in my head. All those years she used no evidence as her weapon. And now I was holding evidence she tried to erase. Nana reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "There's more," she said. My stomach dropped. "More." Nana pulled out a second page. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten. In my mother's handwriting. A note clipped to the specialist's letter. I recognized the slant, the tightness, the neat cruelty. "We cannot have this on file in a way that affects her future. Keep it vague. If she grows out of it, fine. If she doesn't, we manage quietly. She must learn not to make a spectacle." My breath caught on a sob I didn't know I still had. Spectacle. Like my pain was a performance. I looked up at Nana Ruth. "You kept this?" Nana nodded, tears in her eyes. "Because I was afraid," she whispered. "One day she'd say you were lying, and you'd have nothing. I wanted you to have something. Something. A record. A paper trail. A way out of the story she built around me." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. "Where are you?" Another. "We need to talk." Then. "Don't make this worse." My stomach twisted. Nana's jaw set. "She knows," she said. I stared at the letter in my hands. My fingers left faint damp prints on the paper. I thought of the auditorium. Of her voice, useless. Of her letter to my employer. Terminate. Of the forged authorization. Of the fake email. And now this, proof she'd been shaping my medical reality since I was a child. I set the papers down carefully, like they were holy. Then I looked at Nana Ruth and said the words I'd never let myself say. She did this on purpose. Nana's eyes closed, and a tear slid down her cheek. "Yes," she whispered. "She did." Daniel read the pediatric letter twice, his face hardening with every line. "This is significant," he said quietly. "It's old," I said. "Will it matter?" Daniel's eyes met mine. "It matters because it shows pattern," he replied. "Long-term intent. And it matters because she explicitly referenced reputation as a reason to manipulate records. He began drafting a new letter on his laptop. Not just to my mother. To the hospital system, too. To request a full audit of every request made under my name for the last decade. A decade. My chest tightened. Daniel spoke as he typed. We'll send a cease and desist to your mother. We'll notify her that any further contact with your employer or healthcare providers constitutes interference. My hands curled in my lap. She won't listen. Daniel's voice was calm. Maybe not, he said. But people like her care when there are consequences attached. He printed the cease and desist and slid it across the desk. At the bottom was my mother's name. Evelyn Marsh. It looked strange there, like seeing a predator's name on a cage. Daniel added, also, we should consider a protective order if she escalates. My stomach dropped. A protective order. She's my mother. Daniel didn't flinch. And she's breached your privacy, forged your signature, and attempted to damage your employment, he said. The label doesn't change the behavior. My phone buzzed again. A call. From my mother. Daniel nodded toward it. Let it go, he said. I did. It rang out. Then came a voicemail almost instantly, like she'd been waiting, finger hovering over record. I put it on speaker, because Daniel needed to hear. My mother's voice filled the office, tight, angry, controlled. I know what you're doing, she said. I know you're digging into old things. You're going to make yourself look insane. You're going to ruin your own life. Stop. A pause. Then her voice softened into something that used to fool me. I love you, she said. And I'm trying to save you from yourself. Then, like the mask slipped. If you take this any further, I will tell them things you don't want out. I will. The voicemail ended. Daniel's face was still. He clicked stop. Then he looked at me. That's a threat, he said. On record. On record. I swallowed hard. For years, she'd threatened me in whispers. Now she'd done it in audio. She was getting sloppy. Because she was losing control. Daniel slid the cease and desist into an envelope. We deliver this today. My stomach clenched. She'll explode. Daniel's eyes were steady. Let her, he said. And something in me, some old fear, shivered. But underneath it was something else. A strange calm. If she exploded, she'd finally show everyone what I'd been living with. And I was done protecting her mask. I came back from lunch and saw her immediately. My mother stood near the reception desk like she owned the building. Cream blazer. Pearls. Perfect hair. But her smile was wrong. Too tight. Her eyes scanned the lobby sharply, hunting. When she saw me, her face brightened with the kind of false warmth that made my stomach churn. There you are, she said, voice loud enough for reception and passing employees to hear. I felt my heart punch my ribs. I walked toward her, forcing my body to stay calm. Evelyn, the receptionist said politely, uncertain, you can't. My mother cut her off with a smile. I'm family, she said, as if that was a badge. I stopped a few feet away. What are you doing here? I asked quietly. Her eyes flashed. Don't speak to me like I'm some stranger, she hissed, then immediately raised her voice again, performing concern. I've been worried sick. You're not answering. After everything that happened. Employees slowed as they walked by. Curiosity drew them like gravity. My mother's favorite stage was any place with witnesses. I felt my hands start to tremble, not from fear but from my body's instinct to flee humiliation. I reached into my pocket and pressed my thumb against the pill organizer's edge. Plastic. Grounding. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you can humiliate me and walk away? She whispered. Do you know who I am? I looked at her and said, very quietly, yes. She blinked. I continued, you're the person who forged my signature. The words were soft, but they landed like a slap. Her face twitched. She leaned in even closer, smile fixed, eyes bright with rage. You're sick, she whispered. You don't remember things correctly. Everyone knows that. Not anymore, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cease and desist envelope. I held it out between us. She stared at it. "What is that?" she asked, though her voice had already turned wary. "A letter," I said. "From my attorney." Her eyes widened. I saw the smallest tremor pass through her fingers as she took the envelope. Then her gaze snapped up, furious. "You brought a lawyer against your own mother," she hissed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't perform. I just told the truth. "You brought my private records into my workplace," I said. "You tried to get me fired. You did this." The receptionist watched, frozen. A man in a suit slowed, then stopped outright. My mother's cheeks flushed red, then began to pale again. "You're making a scene," she snapped. I almost laughed at the irony, but it came out as breath. "No," I said. "You are." Her eyes darted around, noticing the attention. And I saw her recalibrate, her mind shifting into damage control. She lifted her chin and smiled at the onlookers. "My daughter isn't well," she announced. "She's having an episode." The old script. The old poison. But this time, someone stepped forward. It was Gordon from legal, emerging from the elevator with Elaine beside him. His face was tight. "Ms. Marsh," Gordon said sharply, "you are not authorized to be here." My mother's smile froze. "I'm her mother." Gordon's voice turned colder. "And you have been formally barred from involvement. Leave. Now." My mother's eyes flashed with humiliation. She looked at me, her gaze full of quiet hatred. "You'll regret this," she mouthed, too soft for the others. Then she turned, head high, and walked out. But as she passed the glass doors, her hand shook. She wasn't shaking from illness. She was shaking from the first real consequence she'd ever faced. And I stood there, heart racing, body aching, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not victory. Relief. Because the whole building had seen it. The mask slip. The performance. The manipulation. I wasn't alone in it anymore. The compliance meeting felt like a courtroom without a judge. A rectangular table. A speakerphone in the center. A folder at every seat. Andrea, compliance officer, sat across from me. Rosa was there too, her expression grim and supportive. Daniel sat beside me, calm as ever. Across the table sat 2 hospital administrators and their counsel. "This is an internal review," Andrea said, voice steady. "But given the seriousness of unauthorized requests and identity misuse, we are treating this as a critical incident." Critical incident. My stomach tightened. Andrea opened a folder. "We conducted an audit of records requests on your account over the last 10 years, she said. "We found multiple request events with inconsistent authorization." My hands trembled. Daniel's elbow brushed mine, grounding me. Andrea continued, "We also found something else." My breath caught. "What?" Andrea flipped to the next page and slid it forward. A list. Dates. Departments. Request descriptions. Then, at the bottom, notes. Caller repeatedly requested physician narrative notes and psychological assessment references. My throat went dry. "I've never had psychological assessments," I whispered. Andrea's eyes met mine. "We noticed," she said gently. Yet the caller insisted. Insisted. My mother's voice in my head, attention-seeking, unstable, dramatic. Andrea turned to the hospital counsel. "I will read the internal call logs into the record," she said. Into the record. The phrase made my spine stiffen. Andrea began reading, voice clear, unembellished. Call log, May 14, 2015. Caller, E. Marsh. Relationship, mother. Caller requests documentation regarding patient's behavioral patterns and asks if symptoms could be psychosomatic. Staff notes. Caller appears agitated, dismissive of diagnosis. I felt my face heat with shame that wasn't mine. Andrea continued. Call log, September 2, 2017. Caller requests anything indicating patient exaggeration to help manage her. Staff notes. Caller states patient lies for attention. My chest tightened. I looked down at my hands and saw them clenched. Andrea read more. Each one was a nail in the coffin of my mother's narrative. And then Andrea's voice changed, slightly. She paused, glanced at another page. Call log, January 11th, 2019, she read. Caller requests removal of certain documentation from a summary. Staff notes. Caller asks to keep things vague due to family reputation concerns. I swallowed hard. I remembered Nana Ruth's letter. My mother's handwritten note. Keep it vague. Don't make a spectacle. Andrea looked up. Ms., she said my name softly. We have evidence that an individual repeatedly attempted to influence documentation. That is unacceptable. Unacceptable. A strange word to hear applied to something I'd lived with like weather. The hospital counsel cleared his throat. We're reviewing staff compliance failures, he said. Some of these releases should not have occurred. We will be reporting this incident per our obligations, and we will issue you a formal notice, including corrective measures. Corrective measures. My hands trembled harder now, not from fear, something like vindication. Andrea turned the final page. There is one more log, she said quietly. And I want to read it carefully, because it aligns with your employment interference claim. My heart hammered. Andrea read. Call log, March 6, 2024. Caller requests records for employer verification. Caller states patient is an unreliable employee and requests records to prove fraud to employer. Staff notes. Caller insists patient is useless and needs consequences. My breath caught like I'd been punched. Useless. The word. The same one she'd used on stage. In public. Like she practiced it. Andrea closed the folder. The room was silent, heavy with the weight of words that were finally not trapped in my chest. Daniel spoke gently but firmly. This establishes a pattern of harassment and interference, he said. We will be requesting certified copies of these logs. The hospital counsel nodded. We will provide them. And then something happened I didn't expect. Rosa reached into her own folder and slid a small printout toward me. What's that? I asked, voice hoarse. Rosa's eyes were tired but kind. It's a note from a nurse, she said softly. From years ago. I found it attached to one of your older visits. I stared at the paper. It was handwritten, quick. Patient's mother dismissive. Patient quiet, anxious. Patient apologizes repeatedly for symptoms. Remind patient, illness not a moral failure. I stared until tears blurred the ink. Some stranger. Some nurse I barely remembered. Had seen me. Had known. My throat burned. Rosa touched my hand briefly. You were never the problem, she whispered. And I realized, sitting in that compliance office, that I'd carried my mother's shame like it was my own blood type. But it wasn't. It was hers. And now it was documented. Stamped. Read aloud. In a room full of people who had no reason to protect her. Nana Ruth called a family meeting. She said it calmly on the phone, like she was inviting people over for dinner. But I knew better. When I arrived, her living room felt like a set. Couch. Chairs. The old rug. The smell of furniture polish, faint, familiar, and suddenly nauseating. My mother sat on the couch, posture perfect, hands folded. My aunt sat in an armchair, eyes wide with discomfort. A cousin I barely spoke to hovered near the doorway like she wanted to escape. Nana Ruth stood by the fireplace, a folder in her hands. When she saw me, her eyes softened briefly, then hardened again. Sit, Nana said. I Saturday. My mother's gaze flicked over me, assessing. Judging. Searching for weakness. She smiled slightly. You look tired, she said. I didn't answer. Nana Ruth held up the folder. I have something to read, she said. My mother's smile faltered. Mother, don't. Nana Ruth's voice snapped like a whip. Enough. The room went still. Nana Ruth looked around at the family. For years, she said, we have allowed Evelyn to define reality. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My mother's cheeks flushed. This is ridiculous, she said lightly. She's sick. She's confused. Nana Ruth turned toward her slowly. You know what I'm confused about? Nana said. How you can look at your own child's pain and use it as a weapon. My mother laughed once. Too sharp. I did what any mother would do. No, Nana said. You did what a frightened woman would do. My mother's eyes narrowed. Nana Ruth opened the folder. These are hospital compliance call logs, she said. Certified. My mother's face tightened. Nana began reading. Not dramatizing. Not performing. Just truth. Call log, September 2nd, 2017. Nana read. Caller states patient lies for attention. My aunt gasped softly. My mother's eyes flashed. That's taken out of. Nana Ruth continued. Call log, January 11th, 2019, she read. Caller requests removal of certain documentation due to family reputation concerns. My mother's skin drained of color. She stood abruptly. This is private. Nana Ruth didn't flinch. You made it public, she said coldly. You took it to her employer. You stood on a stage and called her useless. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Nana Ruth held up another paper, the pediatric specialist's letter. And this, Nana said, voice shaking with anger now, is from when she was a child. The word child hung in the room like a bell. My aunt's hand flew to her mouth. She was sick, back then. My mother's eyes darted. Nana read the line about minimizing documentation for insurability and reputation. My cousin looked at my mother with something like horror. My aunt whispered, Evelyn. My mother's voice rose. You don't understand what I was trying to do. Nana Ruth's eyes blazed. Oh, we understand, she said. You were trying to protect a name, not a person. My mother turned to me, desperation breaking through her Polish. Tell them, she demanded. Tell them how hard it was. Tell them how you ruined every holiday with your episodes. I felt the old instinct, to shrink, to apologize, to become small enough that she could feel big again. My chest tightened. The room smelled like Polish and old carpet and something sour. I pressed my thumb against the pill organizer in my pocket. Click. Imagined. Ground. I looked at my mother. And I spoke, slowly, clearly. I didn't ruin holidays, I said. I was sick. My mother's eyes flashed. You always. I cut her off gently. And you always needed me to be at fault, I said, voice steady. Because if I wasn't at fault, then you were just cruel. My mother's face went white. Silence fell. Nana Ruth's voice softened, but it was deadly. Evelyn, she said, you forged your daughter's signature. My mother's breath hitched. My aunt whispered, is that true? My mother looked around, cornered. And then, like an animal with no escape, she snapped. Yes, she spat. I did it. Because she would never have survived without me. She can't handle things. She's weak. She would have let the world swallow her. My aunt recoiled as if struck. My cousin's eyes filled with tears. Nana Ruth's face crumpled, not with pity, but grief. My mother's chest heaved. Then she hissed, quieter, venomous. And I won't be remembered as the mother of a failure. Failure. The word sat between us. I felt something inside me settle. I stood slowly. My legs trembled, but I stood. I took the pill organizer out of my pocket and set it on Nana's coffee table. The room stared at it, small, plastic, ordinary. I've taken pills every day for years, I said softly. Not because I want attention. Not because I'm weak. I looked at my mother. But because I want to live. My mother's lips trembled, not with remorse, but with rage and humiliation. I continued, voice quiet but clear. You can keep your reputation, I said. I'm keeping my life. My mother swallowed. For the first time, she didn't have a line. No script. No performance that fit this moment. Nana Ruth's voice turned final. Evelyn, she said, you are not welcome here until you get help and until you stop harming her. My mother's face twisted. You're choosing her over me. Nana Ruth's eyes narrowed. I'm choosing truth over your lies, she said. My mother looked at me one last time, eyes bright, face pale. And then she grabbed her purse and walked out, slamming the door hard enough that the wind chimes rattled violently on the porch. The sound lingered, like a bell after a punch. No one spoke for a moment. Then my aunt began to cry quietly. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know. I sat down slowly, my whole body aching, like the confrontation had physically bruised me. Nana Ruth came to me and pressed a kiss to the top of my head. You did good, she whispered. And for the first time in my life, I believed an adult when they said I wasn't the problem. Justice didn't arrive like thunder. It arrived like mail. A certified letter from the hospital system. Apology, acknowledgement of improper releases, notice of corrective action. A formal notice from my employer, written confirmation of my standing, updated privacy controls, documented non-retaliation terms, and a new compliance policy regarding external consultants. And then another letter, from Daniel's office, summarizing the outcome of the matter with my mother. We didn't send her to jail. Not because she didn't deserve consequences, but because I had to make a choice. I could pursue criminal charges for the forgery and identity misuse. Or I could secure what I needed most. A legal boundary. A documented cease and desist. A no-contact requirement with my employer and healthcare providers. A paper trail strong enough that if she tried again, there would be no ambiguity, only escalation. I chose the path that kept me safest now. Daniel got it in writing. My mother's signature was on the agreement. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her real signature, finally, on a document that limited her power. She didn't admit wrongdoing. People like her rarely do. But she agreed to stop. And sometimes, in real life, that's what victory looks like. Not a confession. A cage. I still get sick. That part didn't change. Some mornings, my joints ache and my stomach rolls and my mind feels like it's wading through syrup. But now, when it happens, I don't hear her voice first. I hear my own. This is real. This is not shame. This is not failure. My co-workers don't look at me with the same careless pity anymore. Some keep their distance. Some surprised me, inviting me to lunch, checking in ways that felt human instead of performative. And I learned something I should have learned as a child. Not everyone will use your vulnerability as a weapon. Only the ones who need you to stay small. Sometimes, late at night, I still replay the auditorium moment. My mother smiling into the MEC, calling me useless. But now, in my mind, the scene doesn't end there. It continues, into the compliance room, into Nana Ruth's living room, into the paper trails read aloud. Into her face turning pale. Into the truth standing in the center of the room like a light no one could switch off. I walk to my nightstand. I open the pill organizer. Click. I take what I need. Not to prove anything. Not to earn love. Just to live. And I close it again. Click. A small sound. A small ritual. A reminder that survival is not a spectacle. It's a choice. Every day. A week after everything settled, I received one last voicemail. Unknown number. I almost deleted it without listening. But something made me press play. A woman's voice, older, careful. This is going to sound strange, she said. But I think your mother did the same thing to my sister. My breath caught. She told our employer my sister was unstable, the woman continued. She got access to some medical information. I don't know how. I only found out after your story, after someone at the hospital mentioned audits. My skin went cold. The woman's voice trembled. If you have records, she whispered, I need to know. Because I think there are more of us. The voicemail ended. I stared at my phone in the silence of my apartment, the city humming outside like nothing had changed. But something had. Because maybe my mother's cruelty wasn't just personal. Maybe it was a pattern bigger than me. Bigger than our family. A trail of people shamed into silence. And the worst part. I suddenly knew exactly why she'd panicked when I started collecting records. Because records don't just prove what happened to you. They prove what happened to others. And if there were others? Then my story wasn't the end. It was the beginning. If you've ever been underestimated, shamed, or told your pain made you useless, comment below with the word enough. Because you don't owe anyone your silence to keep their reputation clean.